Hi, I'm Sam Roberts. Let's take a deep dive into the line of sight map tool, which is a new feature in ProRaster version 4.1. So this is in all tiers of ProRaster, ProRaster Essential, Premium, and Scientific. So the line of sight analysis will be performed on some kind of terrain raster or some kind of digital surface raster. So on screen I have the Glow 30 digital terrain raster for the world. This is a 30 meter or 1 arc second resolution data set for the world. So I'll just zoom in. I'm going to go to a fairly unknown little spot, little national park called the Gundabooka National Park in central western New South Wales. So I'm going to right click, select line of sight, draw, and then click on the map and drag out a traverse, which is a straight line. It's not a multi-segmented line, simply just a straight line, and then release. So what you'll see on screen is the traverse that you've drawn. It will be dark colored, indicating that those areas of the terrain are visible, and light colored, indicating that those areas of the terrain are not visible. It will also extract a profile along that traverse and display it here on the screen. And again, it'll be rendered as dark where it's visible and light where it's not visible. So you can see that I've stood on the edge of this mountain. I can't see the mountain as it falls away from me, but then I can see some of the other ground in front and the next little mountain range, and then I can see right out to the southeast, out over the hinterland. Now, just a couple of things. Firstly, the system needs to know what raster or what grid you want to target. So if you have a complicated algorithm with multiple grids or different rasters in different components, then you need to go to your workspace tree and select the component that has the grid and the band that you're targeting to do the analysis, and then draw your line of sight. Secondly, when I draw a line of sight and let go so that I have my traverse, you'll get this report in the main dialog. So you get a line of sight report, tells you what raster it came from, the distance along the traverse. It tells you how far you've managed to see, in this case 33.6 kilometers. Gives you your observer location and the target location, which is at the end of the traverse. And then it will tell you how far you have to raise the target in order to make that target visible. And you can see that we've just missed out on a little bit right at the end of that traverse. And it's saying if that target was 8 meters higher, then you'd be able to see it from your location. On the other hand, the observer would have to be raised 502 meters to be able to sight that target at the end of the traverse. And then it gives you some statistics about the change in elevation over that traverse. So on our menu, we can clear our line of sight, we can draw a line of sight, and we can get to our line of sight settings. Here's our settings dialog. So if you change any of these settings and then hit OK, the current line of sight analysis will be updated. So for example, I can change my observer height, which is the height of the observer at the beginning of the traverse, and say make it 25 meters. Hit OK, and the analysis will change and update on screen. So let's just take a look at some of those properties very quickly. It's very much like drawing a profile. So this top section here controls the position and the size of this profile box on screen. This bottom section here controls your spheroid. So the Earth is curved, and that affects your ability to see over the horizon. And we control that curvature by putting in the radius of the planet on which you're standing, and the default is the radius for the Earth, specified in meters, so 6,378 kilometers. Atmospheric refraction on the Earth gives you the ability to see a little bit further over the horizon. So you can turn that on or off. If you were doing an analysis of line of sight on Mars, for example, you would change the spheroid and you'd turn off the atmospheric refraction, because that wouldn't have much effect on Mars. But on Earth, it does actually allow you to see just a little bit over the horizon as the light is refracted around the planet. So then you have your line of sight traverse settings. So you can set an observer height. So this is the height of the eyeball at the beginning of the traverse. You can set a target height. So this is a tower placed at the end of the traverse. And then you're able to micro adjust the observer and the target position. So by clicking Edit End Coordinates, you can go in and change these coordinates. These coordinates are in latitude and longitude. You can edit these coordinates and change them, and that will update your traverse. You can also fix the start point, and let me demonstrate that straight away. So I'm going to hit Fix Position on the start point. Then I'm going to hit OK. Now the start point is always going to be the same regardless of where I draw my traverse to or from. So if I draw it from here, you can see it's snapped right back to that position that I was using before. So this is quite useful if you want to get the same analysis consistently all the time, but you want to draw multiple traverse lines. So let me go back into there and change those settings back to standard. The standard observer height is 1.8 meters, which is the height of a human eyeball. Let's take a closer look at the observer and the target heights. So the observer height is like placing a tower at the observer position. So whatever this offset is, let's say it's 25 meters, and it's always in meters. It is a 25-meter tower on top of the terrain at that point. So wherever you start your traverse, it will identify what the height of the terrain is at that point, and then it's going to add this observer height to it, so a 25-meter tower. The target height is only placed at the end of the traverse. So let's add a 100-meter tower at the end of the traverse. And now I'll just draw a new traverse here, perhaps through this way. Well, that's not really working for me. Let me try through here. No, that's how about that? That's not too bad. Okay, so let's take a look at this. So you can see a vertical section on the profile here. That is the 25-meter tower that I placed the observer on at the beginning of the traverse. And you can see a 100-meter high vertical section at the end of the profile. This is the target location, and this is the 100-meter tower that I placed at the target location. And you can see that the observer sitting at the top of his observer tower is able to sight about 60% up the way of that target tower and sight the rest of that target tower. And here you can see the observer is able to see the entire height of that target tower. So for example, at the target location you might place something like a wind turbine or a building, some kind of or a 5G tower, something like that, something that you're trying to sight. And at the observer location, well, you might be on the ground, you might be standing at 1.8 meters high, or you might be on the third floor of a building, you might be about 10 meters high. Those are the examples that we're looking at. Now let's look out over the ocean. So we're looking at the same raster that we had before. This is GLOW 30, 1 arc second, 30-meter resolution for the globe. But it's now being processed in real time through a virtual raster calculator operation where I'm replacing all of the empty cells, the null cells, with the value 0 to simulate the surface of the ocean. So let's come over here to my place, my little suburb, and it just so happens that the Prime Minister of Australia has a house, a beach house up the road, and so let's figure out what he can see from his location on the beach. So he lives up here somewhere. I'm going to draw a line of sight from the edge of the cliff here just to get started. And now I'm going to go in and I'm going to fix that starting position so that when we draw it again, we'll be getting exactly the same starting position. So now he's probably sitting on his balcony, so we'll put him in at 6 meters high. And let's put a tower at the target, Barangaroo Tower, 270 meters high down in Sydney, and then let's see what we can sight of that tower. So let's zoom out I can probably come in a bit tighter. So there we go. So we have PM's house up here, and down here is the Sydney CBD. So let's draw our profile. And as you see, it snapped straight back to that position. So looking out over the ocean, Prime Minister can see about, where are we, about 27 odd kilometres out to sea before the curvature of the Earth gets the better of him. And then looking through here, Palm Beach is hidden to him. He can't see Barrenjoey Head, but he is just starting to pick up some of the headlands along the northern beaches, so he can see some of those things. This is North Head at the entrance to Sydney Harbour, so he's able to see the cliffs of North Head. South Head he's not able to see. South Head is invisible to him, but a bit further down the coast he starts to pick up the cliff line again. And then moving across to the CBD in here, you can see that he can't actually see the Central Business District, but he can see some of the buildings in the Central Business District. So if I just sit there where Barangaroo is, you can see here at our analysis, the tower, the 270 odd metre high Barangaroo Tower here at the end. He can see sort of the top third or more of that building. So if Gina Reinhardt or James Packer or somebody is sitting up there on the penthouse, they can wave to him up at Copacabana as like, "G'day, Albo," and they can see each other from that distance. So let's make the system work a little bit harder. This is a LiDAR dataset of the Warrumbungles, a national park in New South Wales. So there are about 4.8 billion returns in this dataset. So what we're going to do is use virtual gridding to grid this dataset on the fly, and we're going to do line of sight extractions from that gridded dataset on the fly. So I'll just close those points. So here's our virtual grid. This has not been prepared in advance. This is coming directly from the LiDAR pulse return data in real time. The Warrumbungles is a volcanic terrain, and there are a number of nice features out here which are of interest to people bushwalking and so forth. So let's see what we can see from the campground. So I'll turn on my line of sight, just go to my settings. So my observer height is 1.8 meters, seems fair because I'm out bushwalking. Actually, I'm not quite that tall. And everything else is okay. I need to put this over on the left and make it a bit higher so that you guys can see it. So just drawing a line of sight profile from here. The system will take a second just to bring that in, because it's actually, everything is done at the scale at which you draw the line. So when you start off like that, it's extracting data at a higher resolution. So it went back to the gridding engine and generated more data. So looking out from the campground, we can see over here to the Anglo-Australian telescope, which sits up on top of this headland. And we're in a kind of a bowl, so coming down to here, unfortunately, I've placed the profile right in the wrong spot. We can see the Beludri spire, which is just being picked up there. And then coming through here, we're seeing the bread knife. We're picking up Makator. And now coming over to a big mountain called Bluff Mountain. I think I'm a bit lost. Yes, we can't quite see it. We're only just seeing the very tip of Bluff Mountain, which is probably the most spectacular feature in the park. So just a pity you can't quite see that from the campground. And continuing to move around, we come to Mount Exmouth, which is the highest mountain in the area. And it's pretty much not visible. We can just spot the leading edges of it, but the peak itself is not visible. Now, if we put the campground sort of a bit further over this way a bit, over the hill, let's come over here. Now we get a good view of Mount Exmouth. We can see that. Coming around here through the grand high tops. Now we can see the cliff. Whoops, I've just moved. There, the cliff that is Bluff Mountain. There it is. And coming around here, we can spot Makator, which is a volcanic neck. There's the bread knife, which is a dolerite dike formation. Another tour in here, Beludri spire, another volcanic neck. So that's working off of a grid that's being generated on the fly. So another example here where we're making the system work harder. We have LiDAR data for Central Coast, and we are gridding that LiDAR data on the fly, and that's what you can see on screen. So if I zoom in, we can come into to My House. Now I'll just place that over there. Line of sight. Let's draw a line of sight, and come into our settings. I'm going to draw it from my house from about, say, 6 meters high up on the balcony. Hit OK. And my place is just in here. So if I draw a line of sight from out here, I can see what's visible from my house. Nothing much behind me, but I can see out into the valley. I can see some of the houses and the hills and the bowl on the other side. But as I come around towards the ocean, my view is impeded by this hill and I can't see out towards the ocean. So I don't have those prime ministerial ocean views. Let's make a modification. Go into our virtual gridding. So instead of gridding the ground, so this was the ground surface, now let's grid the top surface. So we're going to be looking at all the tops of the trees and houses and so forth. So it's bringing that back in. And coming from, now which is it? Is this house? Actually, that's my place right there. And now you can see that, in fact, my view is quite significantly impeded, not only by terrain, but by the trees. In fact, I'm not seeing very much at all because of all the tree cover. And up here on the hill, there's a tower. There's a 5G tower. Let's go into our line of sight properties and set that target height to, I don't know, 20 meters or something. The height of the tower, it's not particularly high. And you can see that on the profile here, that's indicating that from my roof, I am just seeing the top of that tower. But if I go back into my settings and take my position back down a bit, Now I'm no longer able to see the top of that tower. And that's why I can't get half decent 5G internet at my place. Because even though I can sight the tower, all the bloody trees are in the way and they knock out all the signal. So I'm sitting on old broadband internet, which isn't very fast. Anyway, there's another example, working with LiDAR data on the fly, gridding on the fly, doing some line of sight analysis, both with and without the interference of the trees and the buildings. Thanks for watching.